Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans have made their choice to go backwards, full of anger, violence, hate, and division. But we've chosen a different path. Forward, the future, unity, hope, and optimism. I mean this sincerely. We choose to build a better America.
Let's bring in Bakari Sellers. He's a CNN political commentator and a former Democratic state rep in South Carolina. We also have Scott Jennings. He's our CNN political commentator and a former special assistant to President George W. Bush. Gentlemen, great to see you. Bakari, I'll start with you. As a Democrat, do you like this style of President Biden? Do you like this rhetoric that he's using?
I love it. I mean, seeing Dark Brandon, as the Twitter sphere calls him, fighting, defining Republicans, touting his accomplishment, being a messenger, and then standing next to the future. I mean, Wes Moore was just off screen there as the Democratic nominee for governor of the great state of Maryland. You look at his opponent, who is a complete and utter nut. You truly have the dichotomy that is present in America's political scene right now. And Joe Biden actually being articulate, being clear, defining Republicans, standing on achievements, punching them in the face, allowing us to follow him is exactly what we want. It's exactly what we need for this moment. And he was in rare form last night.
All right, let's talk about this semi-fascism comment, because he didn't say it at that rally. He said it at a donor's home before, and it wasn't on camera, so I'll read it. It's a quick sentence here. What we're seeing now is either the beginning or the death knell of an extreme MAGA philosophy. It's not just Trump. It's the entire philosophy that underpins the, I'm going to say something, it's like semi-fascism. Scott, your reaction to that description of that part of the Republican Party?
Yeah, I mean, when I hear that, and of course all we have is the text, we didn't hear how he said it, but when I read those words or hear you read them, what I hear him is doing is maligning all Republicans. I mean, remember, 74 million people voted for Donald Trump in the last election. And we know that Joe Biden has a long history of having very thin skin when people don't do what he wants them to do or is political opposition to him. I mean, just a few months ago, he was saying if you didn't agree with him to federalize our election system, that you were either Bull Connor or Jefferson Davis. Bakari probably remembers that during the campaign, he told African-American voters that if they don't vote for him, they're not allowed to be black anymore. And so when he gets into campaign mode, he gets pretty nasty, he gets pretty partisan, and he shows just how thin his skin really is. So I appreciate that Democrats love fighting Joe as we get into the midterm election, but you have to admit it's not really congruent with the kind of presidential campaign he ran, in which he promised to unify the country, uplift America, save our souls, or whatever it was he was saying. This is in direct opposition to that.
But Scott, what do you describe that part of the party? How do you declassify them? The ones who say, don't believe the truth. We love law enforcement until the laws applied to the former president. The party used to have a platform, and now it literally is whatever the leader wants to do. How do you describe that part of your party?
Well, look, there are people in the Republican Party that I don't agree with everything they think, and I don't agree with everything they say. And there are, I'm sure, parts of the Democratic Party that Bakari Sellers and other Democrats like him don't agree with, everything they say either. That's the nature of political parties. They tend to have wings and factions, and not everybody is always in alignment. But in this midterm election, most Republicans are aligned about one issue, and that is they don't like radical progressive liberalism, and that's how they're going to vote. Yeah. And when I hear Joe Biden talking about the Republican Party and trying to divide it up into sections, he's missing the point. The point is the Republican platform in this election is we don't like the direction that Joe Biden is taking the country. And so they do what they do every election, trying to divide Republicans against themselves. I'm not going to participate in it here today because that's not what this election is ultimately going to be about.
Okay, so I hear you, Scott. But so in other words, you don't believe that there is a distinct majority of what Biden would call MAGA Republicans now in your party?
I mean, I think Donald Trump is clearly the most influential Republican in the party. There's no question about that. That's objectively true. And I think that Joe Biden is probably the most disliked politician in the country, whether you're a MAGA Republican or a McConnell Republican or any kind of Republican. And so, I mean, you can slice it and dice it any way you want. But the only thing Biden is trying to do is to get Republicans fighting with each other so they're not focused on the job that he's doing as president, which most Republicans would say is not very good.
Okay, Bakari, here's where the president's approval ratings are. They're up.
I wanted to respond, Allison.
Oh,
I'm
go
over here
ahead. Go.
chomping at the bit.
Go.
No, I mean my friend Scott Jennings is a communications guru and expert, and you hear him even today tripping over his talking points when talking about Joe Biden. The fact is, there are MAGA Republicans. Scott Jennings is not even a MAGA Republican. Scott Jennings wasn't at the White House or the Capitol on January 6th. He doesn't support that. But there are people who were there. There are people who support it. They are nominees running for United States Senate in the governor's mansion who actually do not believe that Joe Biden won this presidency. So that's who we're talking about. That is semi-fascism. And you can say what you want to say, but we have to call it out as true. And yes, there are individuals and factions in the Democratic Party I do not agree with. But do you know who all Democrats agree with when they hear him speak like that last night? That is Joe Biden. We are all with Joe Biden as he articulated last night what our vision was and what we're fighting against. Scott Jennings, we may not be fighting against you on this particular issue, but we are fighting against those MAGA Republicans because those are the ones who are trying to destroy democracy.
All right, let's now put up the president's approval rating, Bakari. It's up a bit. Now 40% was at 36 a bit ago, 56% disapprove. Do you believe that the fortunes for Democrats have significantly shifted heading into the next couple of months toward the midterm election?
If you would have asked me this question in January, February, I would say we were dead in the water. In fact, I believe I said it on every show that I was on. The fortunes have changed. And the reason why are a few things. One, the reason why is not just the Dobbs decision, but the overreach by state legislatures across the country. You looked at Kansas, you look at what other state legislatures are doing. You see people are actually voting how they feel. They're pushing back and fighting for their freedoms. The other thing is this White House, and you have to give Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer a lot of credit. They've done something that even Mitch McConnell was not able to do when he ran the Senate. They've been able to pass legislation with very thin majorities, and they've made good on campaign promises. Whether or not it's forgiving student loans, or whether or not it's appointing the number of black justices they have, particularly black women, to the Supreme Court, they've actually made good on their promises. I mean, they still have a few more to go. So things are going in the right direction. So I expect that to tick up even more.